everyone. Thank you for coming to join us here, whether you're online or here at the Postal Research and Extension Center here in Biloxi. My name is Stephen Deal, and I'm an Extension Specialist in Land Use Planning with Mississippi Alabama Sea Grant. And I'm joined in this presentation by Candace Wheat, Technical Outreach Specialist with Smart Home America. Today Candace will be here as our smart home expert, helping to kind of lead the majority of the discussion, but you'll hear from me more when we get to talking about the Resilient Housing Guide. I want to get a few logistical items out of the way before we get started. This presentation has been approved for 2 AICP continuing education credits and 2 CFM continuing education credits. If you want to get credits, just put your name, email, and type of credits requested in the chat box, and we'll just go ahead and track that. And Tracy will also be putting the event number in the chat box for reference for any AICP winners. So, and for those of us joining in person, I have certificates of attendance in the back that I'll be signing at the end of the session. Also, we have 2 little pop quizzes, little teaching markers, so to speak, just to sort of see so that you're paying attention. So just have your pens or keyboards at the ready. So without further ado, I'll go turn things over to Candace and we'll get the training session started.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Candace. I am the Technical Outreach Specialist for Smart Home America. We are a 501c3 nonprofit based out of Mobile, Alabama, but Mississippi is where I grew up. This is home to me. I'm from one of the 6 coastal counties. So I'm happy to be in Mississippi today speaking with all of you about Fortified and about the Resilient Housing Planning Guide. Can Margo still hear me? Okay. So our class goals today, we're going to demonstrate the need for beyond code construction, an overview of the levels of fortified home, introduce some terminology and processes and principles of beyond code construction, as well as discuss the value for homeowners and the benefits of the third-party verification that is through the fortified standards. Smart Home's vision is a stronger, more sustainable, more resilient community. When you look at this picture that you see on the screen now, this came from a community in just outside of Panama City, Florida, right after Hurricane Michael hit. When Hurricane Michael hit, if you look at the picture itself, I really like this one because if you look in the background, you're going to see all the devastation and destruction. Hurricane Michael was a Category 5 storm that came through. To me, at first glance, it looks like the destruction happened and then the house was built. When in all actuality, this house was built prior to Hurricane Michael hitting. It is a fortified gold home. And the other beauty of that is that this house was built by the local Habitat for Humanity. I like the fact that that shows you Habitat for Humanity, they're building great homes. I don't want to take anything away from the quality of the homes they built. But what I want to point out is that the Habitat for Humanity is also paying attention to every dollar that goes into these homes. So they're doing things that are going to have a return on safety, on investment for everyone. So Smart Home America, we came to be after Hurricane Katrina came through. A group of like-minded individuals got together and said, hey, 11 months ago, we had a hurricane come through and it had damage and destruction. And now 11 months later, here we are again, and we're rebuilding some of the same structures that we have just, rebuilt less than a year ago. So a group of individuals got together and they said, what can we do that's going to make a difference, building a little bit different? We don't want to do the same things over and over again. And that is how Smart Home America was formed. So we believe that a smart home can withstand wind and wind-driven rain, will survive rising water, is adequately insured, energy efficient, and then and only then do we worry about the Internet of Things as a part of the home or the business. So our name can be kind of confusing to folks. We were around before a smart home was an actual thing. 64% of homes are underinsured by an average of 24%. That means if your home is valued at $200,000 and something happens to it, you're looking at having to cover a cost of up to $50,000 roughly to replace the house to where you were before the event happened. 75% of businesses are underinsured by an average of 40%. And this reason here is why a lot of small businesses especially close after a disaster comes through. They simply don't have the capital to reopen the doors, which not only affects them, but it also affects the community. It affects the economy of the community that disaster happens. We know that 90% of post-cat claims include some sort of damage to the roof itself. The insurance industry takes a huge hit off of the damage to the roof. When you think about, you pass by after a storm, you see all the blue tarps on top of homes. That is a gateway for that water intrusion to happen with the home. So you've probably heard it said somewhere that state building codes do work, and this is true with a caveat. State building codes are effective when they are enforced and adequately in place. If you look at the screen, you're going to see a lot of places, they have a state-wide code, but it's not uniformly enforced. And then there are quite a few states that don't have any kind of statewide code. You'll see in the next animation here, the pink and the purple there are areas that are affected by hurricanes. The yellow is going to be where tornadoes have come through, and then of course wildfires out in the west. A lot of people will say, well, we don't have bad weather here. We don't get these kind of things. We say you just haven't experienced it yet. It's kind of like as someone who grew up along the coast, it's not if another hurricane is coming, it's when another hurricane is coming. We know it's going to happen. We just don't know exactly when it's going to happen. So traditional building codes were built for you, or were put into place for you to have the ability to exit that building. We wanted the building to be structurally sound enough for you to be able to exit it after some sort of event or disaster occurred. But that's traditional codes. It's the minimum standards. The fortified building codes, we want to make sure that the building stays secure, but also adds in property protection to the life safety aspect of building codes. So we want that home to be not only still standing, but we want it to be able to be used, and we want it to be able to be used quickly after the event occurs. So looking at the screen here, this is a perfect example of building codes working, the newer that those building codes are. If you look at the home in the upper left-hand corner, it was built to the 2017 building codes. These homes went through Hurricane Harvey. Structurally, that house looks solid. When you look at it, structurally, it looks sound. But you'll notice that the metal roof is missing from that home. With that metal roof missing, then that opens up. If any of you have been up on a roof when it doesn't have that roof covering on, you'll know that there are the gaps between the roof deck, and those gaps have to be there. Those gaps open up a lot of space for water intrusion to happen into the home. And remember, 90% of post-cat claims are coming from that water intrusion. Between 2017 and 2000, there was a substantial increase in the building codes and how those building codes affected the two buildings that you see there. Complete and total loss on the 2000 home. If you look along the bottom there, you'll see that there was a home that was built originally in 1970. And then there was a remodel done on that home in 2008. That home also looks pretty structurally sound at this point. But then as you kind of move down, you'll see that one from 1972. Complete and total loss again. So we are a nonprofit, but we also work with an organization called IBHS, or the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. They are also a nonprofit funded solely by the insurance industry. What you see on the screen here is a 6-story test chamber that is located in Richburg, South Carolina. It's a $40 million research facility that they have the capabilities to build complete and total houses and put those houses in there and introduce different elements of Mother Nature to see how those houses are going to react to it. They focus on 4 main perils while they are testing these homes. We're looking at wind, hail, rain, and wildfire. So quick tour of the facility. We've got the roof farm over on the left as we fly in there, where they have shingles in different stages to see how the shingles are going to react. 105 fans capable of producing 130 mile an hour wind. They recreate realistic hail to see how those shingles are going to react to the hail in a real environment. They also have the ability, and they're the only known facility to be able to introduce embers into the wind stream to see how a home is going to react. Of course, wind and wind-driven rain is another peril that they are looking at and see how it reacts. Not only are they doing the testing inside the lab, but they're also going out into the field after an event to make sure that what they're seeing in the lab is recreated exactly as though it was out in the field. It's not just homes, it's also commercial buildings that they do this testing on. I mean, it's pretty awesome what they can do there. It's just amazing to me that the fact that they can take a house and blow it apart the way they do. But they do that so that they can see where it fails. Where are the fail points, and how can we make this building stronger? How can we make it more sustainable? So our mission is to educate all the folks that you see on the screen here, folks like yourself, real estate agents, insurance agents, anyone who touches the built structure, whether it be a contractor, the politicians who have their hands in the policies that regulate. We want to educate all of those people. Our ultimate goal, of course, is the homeowners and the business owners, but we like to speak and share this information with the people that they trust. You don't know me from Adam. I'm here today because I was invited to speak. You know these folks, you trust them, so I'm sharing that information with you for you to be able to share this information with them or to connect us so that we can share that information. So if we know what the wind speeds are with a weather event, because of the research that's been done in the field, as well as the research done in the facility, we know what that wind speed is. We can pretty accurately predict the type of damage that you're going to see. The damage that is seen starts and happens in this order. The first thing that goes is the roof covering, the soffits, and the fascia. Then we move to the wall covering. The roof sheathing and the roof structure are the next to go, which can potentially lead to a total collapse of that structure. These are going to be some side-by-sides of damage that you see in the field with real world weather events, as well as the damage that is seen inside the research facility. So here we've got that roof covering kind of flashing through to the wall covering, the roof sheathing and the roof structure, and then that total collapse. The picture that's seen on the screen here, it is from 2020 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They had an EF3 tornado that came through. When that EF3 tornado came through, where this home is located, it was not in the EF3 wind speeds. It was a high 1, low 2 wind speeds where this home was. What I want to point out to you, if you look in the middle of that screen over on the left, you see that white car. Directly behind it, you can see over into the other neighborhood, the rest of the neighborhood. This is what we refer to as a damage amplifier. And the reason why this is a damage amplifier is the garage door is no longer there. The garage door had been closed when the weather event happened. What happens with a garage door when that garage door is breached? All of the wind rushes in, and it basically takes the house and creates like a balloon effect. All that wind rushes in, the pressure builds up, and the home itself explodes out on itself. So all those bricks you see down in the front, those came off of the side wall of that garage. Here's the thing, and which led to, when that garage led to the rest of the destruction and the rest of the home there. Here's the thing, had that garage door stayed intact, then chances are, yes, this house may have had some sort of damage to it. There may have been some shingles blown off of it, that, you know, in that category, but it would not have seen the total loss that you see here. The home would have still been livable by the people who were inside of it. So that's why we refer to that garage door as a damage amplifier. We can't prevent all of the damage that you see during a tornado, during Category 5 hurricanes. We can't prevent all of that. But what we can do is we can have a positive effect on what you see here in the 2 and the 3, EF2, EF3, and we can eliminate all of the damage in the EF0 and 1 debris fields. So in 2013, I don't know if you guys remember or not, but there was a devastating EF5 tornado that came through Moore, Oklahoma. When that EF5 tornado came through, the total path of the tornado was 17 miles. Of that 17 miles, 0.0012 square miles were actually affected by the EF5 wind speeds. Less than a half of a square mile had that EF4 wind speeds. So you're looking at us being able to make a huge positive impact on the rest of that debris field that comes through. Of course, in the EF4 or EF5, community shelters and storm shelters, those are what we recommend because there is no way to guarantee safety. So a little bit closer to home, this picture that you see here is from Prattville, Alabama, and an EF3 tornado that came through in January of 2022. Up at the top, you're going to see where it was destroyed. And I know I say that word a lot, but there's not really another word to explain what you see there. Just below it, you'll see the house. It looks silver, but it was a blue tarp that was on that house. The sun kind of distorts the color there. But down here in the bottom, you see the Fortified logo. Where that Fortified logo is next to a house. That house had a fortified roof on it. That fortified roof was put on by the Habitat for Humanity in the Prattville area, and it was put on with funds from the Strengthen Alabama Homes program. We're going to talk a little bit about grants and incentives and things like that in a little bit, but this gentleman that lived here, Mr. Gary, is the gentleman who lived there, and he talks about how he was inside the house and he could hear the wind rushing in and getting under up into the attic, and how he was concerned that he was going to have damage and that his roof was about to blow off the home. But because of the way that fortified roof is attached, it's doubled the uplift resistance, which allowed his roof to stay intact in that tornado. So here are the things that we know post weather event. Newer roofs are going to do better. Homes built to newer codes are going to do better. Low slope roofs are very vulnerable, and installation of those roofs are key in making sure that they stay secure. Garage doors are going to be what I refer to as a damage amplifier. And we know that a sealed roof deck limits the amount of water that is going to get into the home. So we talked about tornadoes. Let's talk about hurricanes for just a second. Hurricane Sally came through in 2020. It was, and being from here, I personally, and I don't start really worrying about evacuating until we get extremely high 3, 4. That's when I personally start looking, and it's a personal choice. Everyone has their own, on that. But that's when I personally start to say, hey, wait, maybe I should get out. It was it was a category 2 hurricane that was coming in. So it wasn't, we kind of, it's not that. But what made it so incredibly dangerous is the speed with which it moved. It moved between 2 and 4 miles per hour, 2 and 6 miles per hour, excuse me, which meant that a lot of the homes that were hit by this were under those hurricane force winds for 6, 7, 8 hours. Their houses were getting hit with those hurricane force winds. That makes a huge difference. So it was the biggest test of fortified to date that we've had. There were, when it came through between Mobile and Baldwin County, and the eye of Sally crossed through in Baldwin County, there were nearly 17,000 homes that had some sort of fortified designation to them, whether it be roof, silver, or gold. There were nearly 17,000 homes. How did those homes do? Approximately 95% of those homes that were in the eye for that extended period of time, taking those hits from the wind, had little to no damage. And when I say little to no damage, I mean not enough damage to trigger an insurance claim. So they may have had some things wrong, but it wasn't enough to trigger the insurance claim. I don't know about you guys, what your deductible is, but I don't want to come off of my deductible even. The other piece to that, of the 5% that did have damage, less than 1% of the damage was related to a fortified system. So less than 1% of 5% of the homes had some sort of damage that was addressed. It wasn't addressed by the things that we are going to talk about. That damage came from something other than the things we're going to discuss today.
Like something blew into the home?
Because of the extent of the rain that came down with Hurricane Sally, the ground was extremely saturated. In Mobile and Baldwin County, lots of big trees. I've got 3 huge oak trees in my yard. If those trees come down, it's not going to matter if my stick built home is built to if that oak tree comes, right, it's done. It's just done. So, the growth of fortified across the country, it's tied to a couple of things. Incentives are what are going to push those, are going to push the number up, and natural events like Sally happening. You'll notice that in 2020, between 2020 and now, that is the largest growth rate that we've seen in the fortified program. Currently, we are over 77,000 designations nationwide. Alabama does lead the nation with just over 55,000 designations in Alabama alone. It is growing. We are moving. The state of Louisiana a couple of years ago started their fortified grant program, which that incentive has helped to bolster their numbers. They're not up to us just yet, but they are working heavily across the Gulf Coast here. We have quite a few homes across Mississippi that have taken the steps to get their home. And again, we're going to talk about the grant program here in Mississippi in just a little bit as well. And it's 32 states across the United States that we are currently in. So what is fortified? I've said that word quite a bit. Somebody, do any of you have any prior knowledge of fortified? A little bit, good bit. Okay. So for those of you who don't, Fortified Home is a voluntary program. It's verified by a third-party independent individual. That's going to be the key for the insurance discounts that come along with the Fortified program. There are two standards for those of us along the coast. It's going to be the hurricane standards. For those people that are a little bit more inland, they would fall under the high wind standards. And then there are 3 levels. This is important. There are 3 levels to the Fortified Home. You've got roof, silver, and gold. Each fortified level builds on the one before it. So what we're saying is that every level has a fortified roof in it. A silver is going to be the silver standards that we're going to talk about, but then it's also going to include the roof, and then gold is going to be all 3 of them combined together. Just kind of a quick overview of the difference between the hurricane and the high wind. For those of us in a hurricane zone, the roof is going to address the roof and the attic ventilation system. In high wind, it's just going to be the roof system. For the silver, we're going to look at the gables, attached structures, garage doors, chimneys, soffits, and the opening protection, how those are connected to the home. For those in the high wind areas, it's going to be the gables, attached structures, garage doors, and chimneys. No one expects, if a tornado is coming through an area, for someone to go out and put corrugated metal on their windows to stop it. And then for the gold, for the hurricane, we're looking at the structure or the continuous load path, and then the design pressure ratings for the opening for hurricane. And then with the high wind, it's just going to be that continuous load path that we are addressing. It's not just for fortified, is not just for homes. The standards, there are also separate standards for fortified commercial as well as fortified multifamily. We're going to focus a lot on the home today and touch on the commercial and multifamily, but that is a separate conversation. If anyone has any questions about that we can have at a later date. So let's dig into the fortified roof itself. There are 3 keys to a fortified roof: nail it down, seal it up, and lock it in. When we talk about nailing it down, what we're talking about is commonly a smooth nail is used on just an average common roof. With a fortified roof, we're using what's called an 8D ring shank nail. And I wish I had a bundle of it to show you guys, but instead of that smooth nail, it's got grooves in it. Those nails, when attached properly and spaced to the fortified standards, are going to double the uplift resistance on the roof itself. So you've got twice as good a chance to keep that roof on. Here is kind of a shot for you of the roof when it is just used with the regular nails being attached, and the damage that happens with that. Again, keeping in mind that 90% of homes that have that claim after us from the water intrusion, that's a lot of space that has been opened up in that home to allow that water to invade into the home. The second key for a fortified roof is going to be sealing it up. So the fortified system wants to make sure that we do everything we can to keep as much water out as possible. There are a couple of ways that you can accomplish this. You can use either a modified vitamin tape, a butyl, or acrylic tape, depending on where you're at. Each of those are approved, but they depending on where you're at would determine which one of those tapes. You're going to put that tape over the seams on the roof deck to help keep that water out. And I think the next slide is the video. So here's a demonstration for you. This is a 1,300 square foot duplex that is inside of the research facility. They built it exactly the same on both sides with one exception. You're going to see that modified bitumen tape as the shingles start to come off here. It's built on a, to me, it looks like a Lazy Susan, but they tell me it's a railroad cart turner. They put the house on it, so obviously they can't spin the fans and move the fans, but they can spin the house to be sure that both sides get hit equally with the same amount of wind, the same kind of water. The duplex was built to the standards that you would see a home in the Atlantic or the coastal region. This is going to be on that right side that did not have the tape on it. You can see the water coming through the gaps and hitting that insulation. We all know what happens when insulation gets wet, it gets heavy. When insulation gets wet and heavy, then it is going to come crashing through the ceiling itself. I mean, 8 inches of rain per hour equates to 7 bathtubs of water that are hitting that roof and getting into your home, leading to what you see here. All that insulation coming crashing through. There's no way anyone could live in this after they evacuated from a hurricane and came back. Also, we understand what humidity does with the mold situation very quickly after. This side is the side that had the tape on the seams, the modified bitumen tape. If you'll notice down there, and it's kind of hard to see in here right now, but down there on the bottom left, there's a little bit of insulation that's on the ground. Where that came from, the wind got up into the attic on that dry side and it blew the insulation around. So when they pulled the attic hatch down, what was sitting on top of that attic hatch came into the home. That's not enough to cause any problems for anyone, though. So after they shut everything down and they made sure that no one was going to get hurt when they walked into this side completely and totally dry. You could sit on the couch. You could sit on the bed. The family that evacuated and came back, they may not have had water. They may not have had electricity, but they would have had a place to stay. And that's a huge part. As people, I'm sure you all have been through a hurricane, at least one, if not Katrina. You understand that having a place to stay is key to being able to get life back to normal. You can't start rebuilding if you don't have anywhere to lay your head. The folks that lived on the other side of that duplex, zero chance that they were going to be able to stay in that house immediately, safely stay in that house immediately. The tape cost less than $500 to put on that left-hand side. Less than $500 worth of tape kept this home livable. When they brought in a third-party independent insurance adjuster after the test had been complete for him to look at, the left side that had the tape, the estimates were about just over $6,000 to repair that home. And that's going to be a lot of the shingles and, up there to repair and replace. On the right-hand side where there was no tape, the estimate was just over $19,000 that was needed to repair that. That's not including the cost of the things that were inside of the home or a place for that family to stay in the meantime until that side of the duplex could have been fixed. So we talked about the tape. Another way to get this done is with underlayment. So the underlayment you'll see on the screen here, we've got the nailing pattern for the underlayment itself. It should be installed with 4 inches horizontal overlap at the top and the bottom, and 6 inches end lap at the top of the roof. The underlayment should have a 6 inches over the ridge on both sides. The nail spacing, we've got 6 inches on center on all horizontal laps and end laps, and then 12 inches on center, both horizontally and vertically in between those laps, or in accordance with the manufacturer's requirements, if the manufacturer's requirements are more stringent than what's here. Nail caps should be left off of the edge by at least 4 inches to cover where the drip edge is going to be installed, and we're going to talk about the drip edge here in just a second. The next way is gonna be a fully adhered membrane. The fully adhered membrane is the simplest way, the easiest way to get that water protection on the roof deck itself. Generally, it doesn't take a whole lot of training to teach someone how to put that on there, not a stringent nailing pattern that has to be stuck with on this. But it's also, when you have a benefit, there's always going to be a disadvantage to it. It's generally the most expensive way. The other positive for the peel and stick or ice and water shield is going to be that it can be used over dimensional lumber or the tongue and groove if you find that on the roof of a house. So the last piece of the roof is going to be the lock it in portion. That's going to be the drip edge itself. So when wind hits a house, it puts a lot of pressure on the edges of the house. There's a lot of pressure from that wind. So what happens is that is a very vulnerable piece of the roof. This is a picture of a drip edge that was just kind of haphazardly put up onto the home, and you can see that it basically peeled the roof off, kind of like a sardine can would get peeled back. When that drip edge was detached, it rolled off. It took the shingles and it took the protection to keep that water out. So down at the bottom where those two are, you see the gap that is in between the nails that are there, and then there's not another nail holding that drip edge on until you get way up to the top. With the drip edge itself, this is with the drip edge itself, sorry. I lost my train of thought. It holds the seal. So with the drip edge, normally when you put a roof on, the drip edge goes on and then they put all the other stuff on it on top of it and nail it down. But the drip edge itself, with a fortified system, is there to lock in that underlayment, to keep that underlayment. And then the other kind of key piece to the drip edge with the fortified is the first row of shingles are also going to be locked underneath that drip edge to hold them in place. If we keep that first layer in place attached to the roof, then you're increasing the chances that the shingles are going to stay on that home. So the nailing pattern is on the next slide. The nailing pattern. Hold on. The nailing pattern that you see here is a little bit different with the way fortified requires that we've got a staggered nailing pattern on the edge of the drip edge, and then when we get to where it overlaps with each other, there has to be at least two nails put into where the drip edge overlaps each other. Pop quiz time. Oh, wait, can I see the pop quiz question?
Mm-hmm. It's up there on the
Oh,
screen.
okay.
Too.
So here's your question. What is the base designation for fortified homes? And so that's the first, the most simple. Yes. Roof. Absolutely. The roof it is.
Ready for me to end the poll?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
I didn't know how many folks we had online.
We've got a couple. Okay. Oh, okay.
All righty. So I've talked a lot about shingles, but shingles are not the latest one.
Oh, no, it won't go off. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll just take that sip. Yes, sir.
Kind of reiterate something you said. Your starter course of shingles has to be underneath the drip edge,
So
according to.
yes. So it's either a starter strip is used, or you can use the glue. And because you asked me, I can't come up with the name of that glue in this moment.
I think
yeah.
you have to do it from that computer. I think you have to stop because it came up because you're a participant. So I think you have to just push X up there because it's coming off on my screen. There we go. Sorry.
Yeah, it's 4 inches worth are coming out from the drip edge itself, and that's where the first layer is laid down. So when that is stuck down, it has basically sealed off the underlayment, whatever is under there to the roof itself to keep it all in place.
I can see the fire and ice, I can see the, you know, the peeling stick.
Mhm.
But the starter course of shingles, but that's required by code to extend out up to a half inch past the edge of the drip. Or to the outside edge of the drip by code. So again. It's just, it's a little confusing because that's not what I'm used to, you know.
So we're gonna take it back a couple of slides. Okay, so let me be sure that I get you this, and off the top of my head right now, I want to say that it's 6 inches. That starter strip on the fortified, but I'm gonna have an answer for you before I leave here.
No big.
Yeah.
That's different from what I'm used to.
It absolutely
I
is.
can see the peeling stick, no problem.
Yeah.
But the starter course and the shingles is kind of the question. Because that's got the adhesive part on it.
Right, and it does, but that starter strip being underneath, being on top of it and that starter strip being attached securely that way only helps to strengthen the connection of the peeling stick. So it's just an extra layer to hold that there so that the shingles that are on top, if the shingles that are, they can't come, that first layer can't come off.
I think the starter strip actually has adhesive on it.
Right,
So if you're putting that under the drip edge, then you're minimizing, I'm not trying to.
No,
create
absolutely.
anything, but you're minimizing, unless you go back and physically put additional adhesive between your starter strip and your cap.
if the starter strip has the adhesive on the back of it, you can use that. You don't have to use the additional adhesive of that starter strip. But locking it in so that drip edge is there to keep the water, to help force the water away from the side of the house, right? Keep the water from getting in underneath the roof deck.
Yes.
So when you put that underneath that drip edge, what you're doing is you're locking everything in, and you're also reducing where that water has a way to get into the underneath of it. Does that make sense? Kind of sort
We're
of.
trying to keep it from peeling up. That's the main emphasis in this whole edge condition.
Absolutely. You're trying to keep it from peeling up so that water stops the 90% of claim, cuts down on that 90% of claims that come in because of water intrusion into the house. So by doing, I feel like I've confused you more.
Don't stop on my part.
I feel like I've confused you more. So let's kind of jump ahead here. So I talked a lot about shingles. Shingles you didn't miss anything. Shingles are not the only. The shingles are not the only thing that can be put onto the home. You can use the metal tile. You can also the low slope roof. It can be a fortified roof as well. I want to actually, seeing this has flipped my brain back to the other disadvantage for the peel and stick is that not all types of roof covering can be used on the ice and water shield. Cedar, for example, is one that could not be used on the ice and water shield. But it can be used, just can't be used on ice and water shield. There is an optional hail supplement for the fortified designation. So you can get a fortified roof silver or gold and add an optional hail supplement to it. For that, need to be sure that the covering matches the home. Steep slope impact rated covering or low slope, depending on what the slope of the house is. If there are skylights in the home, the skylights have to be impact rated. And if there are any solar panels on the roof, those also have to be impact rated. The shingles that are used on that home need to be rated good or excellent by IBHS's rating system to be able to qualify for the hail supplement. On FortifiedHome.org, they have the listing of the shingles that match the hail supplement requirements. So you can find that. If you're looking at doing a fortified roof, you can find what shingles would qualify for that. So that is a fortified roof. Different nail, tighter nailing pattern, some way that has been approved by IBHS in the fortified system to reduce the water that's coming in and locking that drip edge in. That's all you got to do for a fortified roof. The next piece is going to be the fortified silver. With the silver, we're looking at the garage doors, windows and doors. We're looking at any kind of attached structure to the house. And then we're also going to address gable ends. So what you see on the screen here now, these are all approved ways to protect your windows. The metal, the polycarbonate, fabric. If the wind speed for your area is less than 130 miles an hour, you can use the plywood on the windows. The key to any of these is that they have to have a permanent attachment onto the home. So you can't just go out and nail it into the window, the window seal when a storm is coming. It has to have that permanent attachment. And of course, they have to have been rated, tested and rated to meet the standards of the fortified system. So IBHS took a mobile home and they went and they put a carport on it that was attached, just a common way that a carport would be attached to a structure. The first bit here is going to be how it commonly fails. The wind speeds here are 80 miles an hour that you're going to see. In the beginning here, it's going to be a little bit slow motion and then it speeds up very quickly. So what you see to begin with is slow motion version. So keep in mind, 80 miles an hour is going to be an EF0 or a category 1 hurricane. And this is after the home, the carport has been attached correctly. They also up the speed of the wind on that second go round. Let's watch it one more time because it happened so quickly.
I'm guessing they tied it down too, like they made
So-
sure the tie downs on the.
So the rafters are attached to the columns and beams all the way down, and then there is an attachment on the foundation itself. Which we'll see a kind of an example of what that looks like here in just a second, but. So slow motion, 80 miles an hour, very quickly peels back. Lots of that mobile home's interior is now exposed. Full speed. Again, keep in mind that's a Cat 1. Up the speed to 110 miles an hour, which is going to be about a Cat 2. With it attached correctly, everything stays in place. Not again. The other piece to the fortified silver is if you'll remember, was the gable ends. So if the gable end is larger than 36 inches, then it has to be braced back to the house correctly. If it's less than 36 inches, it doesn't need any additional bracing. But because of a 36, the research has shown that at 36 inches, it leaves the home more vulnerable to those winds as they come in if it's not braced back.
Are you talking about overhang? When you say 36 or 36 the distance?
Distance. That like on a front porch that's just right over the door. Generally, those are not going to be 36 inches.
Decorative.
Yeah. But those do have that additional bracing that goes back to it. All right, so this slide, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't have the verbiage all the way down on this one, so I'm going to stand in front of my computer here and give you the specifics on the next piece, which is going to be the continuous load path. The continuous load path is that gold standard for the fortified system. Oh. So it's not playing this video. Okay, well, I guess I won't because it's not playing the video. So let me explain to you without the video playing. So when it would help if I got on the slide itself. So when you see the house here, when wind speeds are coming at it, you've got the forces of the wind hitting the house from the side, but you've also got the forces as they hit to the roof that are pulling up on it. It's very important for the home to have the ability to take all of that wind pressure that's coming to it and a way for it to get from the outside to the ground safely to disperse it. It's what's called the continuous load path, or the force path is what some engineers call it. So with the continuous load path, what we're doing is we're making sure that the roof is secure to the walls, The walls are secure to the foundation so that that wind has a safe path. We're using the straps, or the, let's see, can we go back one so you can see examples of we're using the straps, or the connections that you see over here on the left to make sure that all of those things are safely connected together so that that wind does have a way to make it all the way to the ground. When you have those connections on a fortified gold home, you have a safer, when those winds come through, it's less, because you don't have the home's not, I've lost my words. The home has less chance of it not staying connected to the ground, and that foundation of the home is the key to getting the winds dispersed. I just totally blew that one for you guys. Yes, sir.
Back one. You would hope when your fortified inspector comes out, see the upper right picture.
Yes, sir.
All right, see the up where the sheeting's connected to the top of the rafter.
Oh, where they
top of
missed?
the truss.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yesterday
That is the worst you will find on anything along this coast. They can't nail worth a squat.
So it's funny you say that. We had a monthly evaluator training that we have once a month with fortified evaluators across the country. And yesterday's refresher training was about shiners. That's what we spent the 45 minutes talking about shiners and the problems that they can lead
He'll
to.
tell you, and I'll tell you, that when they miss one, they just keep going. They leave it alone. They don't realize that nail's gonna work itself back out and cause a leak eventually.
So the beauty of fortified is you've got the home inspectors who go out, and home inspectors do the code officials, inspectors that go out, and I'm not saying that they don't do a great job, because they do a great job. The evaluator that is going out, that is that third party we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, their job is to see that before the roof covering goes on and go back to the roofer or the contractor and say, you've got way too many shiners. It doesn't meet the fortified standards. You need to go back and re-nail it. They are there for that very purpose, to make sure that if there is a shiner, that they've gone back and they've put another nail in to make sure that roof deck is securely attached.
So theoretically, those would be the ring shank nails, and you're talking about that part that's at the very, very, very top where you can see the wood.
On the right, you can see the two
bullet.
nails sticking out the
Yeah.
side.
Okay. Gotcha. Just
Yeah.
making sure I was looking at the right thing.
Straight up there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
The nails are balanced, man. If you put enough of them in there, the roof ain't going away.
So what kind of dwelling is, what kind of home is eligible for a fortified designation? A new home or an existing home. An existing home can be retrofitted. It's not as common to see a existing home retrofitted to the gold standards, simply because you would have to basically be doing a complete and total gut to be able to get in to get all of the anchoring done that needs to be done to the home, an existing home. New homes, existing homes, single family detached homes, duplexes, townhouses, manufactured homes can receive a designation. The key to that is that the manufactured home has to have been built after July of 1994, and it has to meet HUD Wind Zone 3 requirements. The last piece of it is it has to be secured to a permanent foundation. So it can't just be still sitting on the wheels or, anything along those lines. It has to be on a permanent. All of those are outlined in the HUD guidelines for manufactured homes. And they can be found there, but it can happen. It's not impossible to do. Normal qualifying types of foundations for a fortified designation. And this is for any roof, silver, gold. The foundation itself can affect whether the home is eligible or not. It needs to be slab on grade, crawl space, stem wall, elevated floors. We see a lot of that along the water, the homes that are built up. Those all can qualify. So when a fortified evaluator comes out, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at the foundation to see if it qualifies. the next thing that they're gonna do is they're gonna go into the attic. And they're gonna make sure that the wood that is used is a 2-inch nominal thickness. They're gonna make sure that the maximum space is going to be at 24 inches. That it's got some sort of wood sheathing for the roof deck, and the design to support gravity or wind loads. The homes you see here would not be eligible. It's a dry stack foundation. So think about a dry stack foundation. Those cinder blocks that you see underneath that mobile home. I would kind of be scared to sneeze, honestly, in that one. I would be afraid that it would tip over. They're not mortared together. There's no glue sticking it together. Think about a dry stack foundation. If you could, have y'all seen the one that's out in the country in Mobile County, out towards the state line, right, Miss? It looks about like that. It's very scary. And sorry, I squirreled. Think about a dry stack foundation. If you could pick the home up, if you were the Hulk and you could pick it up, if you could kick that foundation over and move it, that would be a dry stack foundation. So those are the things that a fortified evaluator, who is that third-party individual who's coming out to document the process of fortified, those are two of the things that they're looking at when they first come out. They are the eyes and the ears of the program itself. They are the boots on the ground who are making sure that the contractor or the roofer is doing all the things that are in the fortified standards for that home to be built correctly or re-roofed correctly. And they are the key to the insurance industry trusting that that roof is done correctly and that that home has been built to the standards, because they're the third party. They have no skin in the game, so to speak. What they are doing is they're going out, they're taking photos of the materials that are being used. They're site-specific photos to make sure that the ring shank nails are being used. They're taking, climbing up on the roof, taking pictures of that nailing pattern inside, looking at the shiners to see how many shiners there are. And then they are also gathering any test reports, any manufacturer's documentation, anything along those lines. And then any kind of fortified compliance forms. If it's a gold home, then there's going to be an engineer that is involved. There's some forms that need to be filled out there by the engineer and stamped and signed off on. They're taking all of that information and they are submitting it to IBHS and the fortified team for another set of eyes to go through and say, hey, the site specific says that shows that the ring shank nails were used. We can see, because there are going to be shiners, regardless of how great they are. There's going to be one or two. They can take a picture of that as the documentation that those have been used, or the material, the box of material on site. So the first thing that happens in the process of getting a designation for a home is the homeowner reaches out to a fortified evaluator. They make contact, they talk about pricing, things along those lines, say, hey, I want to have my home done. The evaluator is then going to make sure that their home meets the qualifications, meets the requirements. The homeowner chooses a roofer or builder. The roofer and the builder are in communication, roofer or builder are in communication with the evaluator. If it's just a roof that's being put on, you guys, I'm sure, are well aware that it doesn't take a whole long time to put a new roof on. Once they start, from start to finish, it's a very quick process. Most of the time it's a day, sometimes a day and a half, unless you have a 5,000 square foot house, and then it might take a little bit longer. But so they are in communication with the evaluator to say on Tuesday at 7:30, we're going to start on this roof, so that the evaluator can plan accordingly to be there to be able to see and get the pictures before the shingles, before the ice and water shield goes on there, to get those nailing pattern pictures to document along the way. They then take all of their documentation, they submit it up to IBHS. That next set of eyes at the fortified team looks at everything, makes sure that we've got all of the pictures that are required, all the documentation, everything signed off on, and then a certificate is issued for the home at a particular address. Requirements for certification to be a fortified evaluator: you have to have some sort of professional experience, carry a minimum amount of insurance, complete an online training course, and then pass the exam that goes along with the online training course. code officials, insurance adjusters, contractors, energy raters, all of those individuals, home inspectors are great candidates to be an evaluator, especially home inspectors themselves, because they're already doing most of these things. They're already employed going out and inspecting the homes. And so it's just the fortified evaluator is something to add to the books for them to offer, another service for them to offer. They're already carrying the insurance. They've already got the professional experience. The only piece that they're missing is the online training modules, and then the test at the end of it to make sure that they understand the standards. So once the certificate is issued, it goes back to the fortified evaluator, who then in turn takes it to the homeowner. It's given to the homeowner themselves. That certificate is tied to the address. It's not tied to the homeowner. So if you have a fortified roof put on, you build a fortified gold home, and then in 2 years you decide, hey, I want to move a little bit further inland, or I want to move a little bit further south. When you sell that home, that designation stays with the home itself. So the next homeowner gets the benefit of that fortified roof. I don't know if any of you have come up for renewal on your insurance here lately, but there's a lot of insurance companies now that are not writing policies unless you have a fortified roof. There are some that are not writing policies on homes unless the home has the gold designation, depending on what part of the county you're in and your proximity to the water itself. Study done by the University of Alabama a few years back showed that a fortified designation has the potential to increase your resale value of your home by 7%. In the long run, fortified is going to pay for itself in the long run is what I mean by that. But so the certificate is transferable between homeowners. After 5 years, a redesignation is needed. The reason for that redesignation being needed, it's a couple fold. We need to make sure that the shingles still have at least 5 years worth of life left on them. And we need to we also need to make sure that any additional construction that was done on the home was done with an evaluator being involved to make sure that that sunroom that you added meets the fortified standards, that the roof that's on it ties in properly. If there had been some reason for a re-roof or repairing on the roof itself, that the evaluator was involved. If solar panels were put onto the home, evaluator was involved. You kind of see a pattern here of the evaluator being involved in that process. If the home is a gold home, silver home, depending on where you're at, that if doors or windows were replaced, that the documentation that door or window meets the standards, that we have that documentation for the door or window that meets the standards. And then of course, you can add a doggy door, but there are specific ways that doggy door that's actually my dog. That's what I was whispering to Tracy just a second ago. That doggy door has been done correctly and meets the standards to keep the home's designation rolling. So I got a call, maybe I guess it's probably been 2 months ago now. There was a home that was built on the water. It was either Orange Beach, Gulf Shore, somewhere right down there on the water. So you and I both know how much that home cost to build. Ridiculous amount of money to build this house. It's built up. The homeowner decided that he wanted to put like a dumbwaiter elevator shaft on the side of it so that they didn't have to carry, and anyone they rented it to didn't have to carry the groceries up and down the 12, 15 feet of stairs. The problem is that when he did that, he paid a contractor to come and do it. The contractor came and did it. They did not get an evaluator involved. The home was built to the fortified gold standards, but there was no evaluator involved with it. And I had the unfortunate task of telling him that your options at this point are to lose your 55% discount off of your wind on your insurance, or take it down, have an evaluator involved, and put it back up. So I say all of that to say it is very important to have an evaluator involved anytime anything is done on the outside of that home. Even something as simple as putting which I know most of us use the internet now for TV, but if a satellite dish were to be put onto the roof, it needs to have that evaluator involved to be sure that it's done so that we don't create an opening for water to get into the home. Oh, so we've talked a lot about the fortified home Again, there are commercial and multifamily standards. Both of those start with an application filled out through the IBHS website. There are only one standard for commercial, and that's wind. There are still 3 levels of the roof, silver, and gold. And fortified properties help communities to recover faster after a disaster. So just for you to kind of see what's covered, a lot of the things that we talked about with the home in a way apply to the commercial and multifamily. We're still on the roof. We're still trying to keep the water out, right? With the fortified commercial, it's also looking at any roof mounted equipment. With silver, for the silver, we're looking at the building envelope, the walls, the windows, doors, whether it be, individual doors or the big roll-up doors that are on the side of big warehouses kind of thing. And then with the gold, we're looking at the key structural load path, roof to wall connections, floor to floor load transfer. For the commercial, that's going to be on-site backup power for critical utilities included there. So what you see here is considered a commercial property because it was rental property. The commercial on the right is commercial property. The homes that you see, Lockport, Louisiana, Hurricane Ida came through. These 2 structures are within a half mile of each other. The one on the left, you can see unlivable when Hurricane Ida came through. You can't stay in that. That's not safe to be in. The one on the right, they were both built by the same contractor. Built both of these homes less than a half a mile apart from each other. They were built, the one on the left was built 3 years prior to the one on the right. The key here obviously is that the one on the right had the fortified standards used in it. It was about 3 weeks away from being opened for residents to be able to move into it. There were a little bit of delays. You see, kind of if you look down in the front there, you can see the air conditioner unit kind of floating in the front yard there. The reason why that is there is because they hadn't reached the stage of putting all the standards in place for the fortified to hold that air conditioner unit in place. They were delayed by about 3 weeks getting opening. But the beauty of this is that the folks that on the left a lot of them were able to move into the home on the right, or the complex on the right.
So the people that lived in the ones on the left, that was built by the same contractor, but just earlier, and it wasn't built to fortified standards.
Correct.
So all those people that lived in there, they just let them live in the other ones while they were trying. Okay, gotcha.
The ones who wanted to were able to move from that complex over to over to the new one. The same developer, same contractor, so they were kind of all connected.
Yeah.
I don't know if this video is going to play or not. The lodge. Anybody been to the lodge? The lodge is the first. And I forgot this one had audio with it when I told him earlier that it did not. The lodge was the first commercial designated property. It is designated to the fortified roof. What he's talking about is that after Sally came through, they had a place for a lot of their employees had a place to stay because it had been fortified. They didn't have the damage and destruction that the other hotel properties around them had. So they allowed for some of their employees to come in, the people who were coming in to help us, because we all know after a storm happens, our neighbors are our first help, but a lot of people come in to help with the rebuild after it. So because of the fact they had no damage with the fortified roof, they were able to offer a place. Those people still had a job. They had hot meals because they were there at the lodge. Average loss of revenue for a multifamily property, it lowers it by 38%, and the potential loss severity is lowered by 41% when a fortified roof is put on a multifamily property. So another study done by the University of Alabama, the return on investment for resilient construction can be as high as 72%. And their study also showed that 74% of renters were willing to pay more money to live in a resilient home if they knew that their home was still going to be there after they evacuated. So during Hurricane Sally, after it happened, the University of Alabama did another study. This one is comparing homes with, just regular, no fortified on them, homes that were built to code. You can see a difference here in the damage. The not fortified homes, were, significantly higher than the fortified, roof. The fortified gold, if the home that was built to the fortified gold, you can see how dramatically less that damage was. Code roof and code gold. So in Baldwin County, the majority of the municipalities in Baldwin County have adopted what we call beyond code construction, or the coastal code supplement. And basically what they've done is they've taken the code that is in place and they've taken the pieces that were missing of the fortified program and added them to their code. So you don't have to get a certificate if you build a house or you re-roof over there, but it's done to the fortified standards. Okay. So again, not to be insulting to code officials or anything along those lines, but the homes that were built to the code, beyond code, those actually did less, they performed less well than the homes that had the certificate. So that third party going out and double checking on the roofs, double checking that the standards were being met, improved the performance of the home, even though those homes were built to the code, which included all of the fortified things. That's just what I was just talking about there. So in Alabama, and I use this one because it is the most stable as far as information, most accurate as of today. If you have a fortified designation on your home in the coastal region, if it's the fortified roof, the state of Alabama says if you're an admitted carrier, you have to give a discount. They don't say how much that discount is, but they say if you're an admitted insurance carrier, you have to give a discount. The average that you see for a fortified roof on the coast is 25 to 35% discount off of the wind portion of your homeowner's insurance. For silver, 35 to 45, and then for gold, you're looking at 45 to 55. As you move inland, you're looking at roof 20 to 25, silver 25 to 30, and then for the fortified gold, a minimum of 30% discount. I don't have the hard numbers for the state of Mississippi. Still working with the state to get all of the good stuff worked out on that one. So let's talk for a minute about funding. As incentivizing a fortified roof or fortified gold is part of the way that the program moves. Alabama, Louisiana, you see the other states here that have a grant, some sort of grant program in play. Alabama's is a no match. Louisiana's a $10,000 no match. Mississippi has a pilot program going on right now. It's a no match, $10,000 grant, as long as the roof is being put onto the fortified standards and receives that designation. It's in the pilot stages. It's supposed to be for the 6 coastal counties. So obviously where we're at falls into the area. It's not based on income. It doesn't matter how much or how little you make, you can qualify as long as you own the home. It is your primary residence. You have homestead exemption on it, that sort of thing. In Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, and Arkansas, the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas offers a program for homeowners, $15,000 to go towards a new roof. If you're building a house, then it offers $10,000 towards the cost of the roof through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas Fortified program. That can be, you can go to their website and paperwork to fill out. That one is income restricted. I think it's 120% of the median average for the income on that one. We have other states that are currently under consideration with either a grant, some sort of legislation about getting a grant in place to get a program that is like the Strengthen Alabama Homes, Strengthen Mississippi Homes, the Fortify Louisiana Homes program. Oklahoma started their program actually in the beginning of this year. They're still calling it a pilot, but they have made a great strides towards their program being fully off the ground. And this was pretty self-explanatory. It's a video. Home on the right is built to the fortified. The homes, plural, that you see destroyed on the left are all built to code. Both of them are built to the standards that you would see in the coastal Atlantic region, and they all fail a little bit differently. The difference in cost to build the home on the right and to build the home on the left was $3,000. So the home on the right that withstood all of those tests cost $3,000 more to build than the home on the left. I know $3,000 is a lot of money. A lot of people don't even have $3,000 laying around in the checking account. But when you look at the long term, when you look at not having a home and having to rebuild the entire home as compared to having the home stand, huge difference there. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation. I've monopolized enough time. I'm going to turn it over to Stephen for him to take it from here. For those of you who are not here in the room, I do have the coastal supplements and the resilient housing planning guide up here at the front that Stephen's going to talk about here in just a second, as well as the examples. They're fun.
Thank you, Candace. I'm just gonna talk, my background, of course, is, I am the land use planner, so I'm always interested in some of the resources Smart Home has put together, and one resource that I think is of real benefit for coastal communities and for just communities in general is the Resilient Housing Guide. One thing to kind of mention a little bit is, like, what would happen, like, say, if a disaster wiped out all your workforce housing? This is kind of what happened in Texas's coastal bend region during Hurricane Harvey. And so in that sense, and there weren't tools necessarily. One thing, they did a literature survey, Smart Home did, in conjunction with Mississippi Gulf Coast Community Design Studio. They looked at some of the various resources, and they kind of found a lot in the smaller jurisdictions. They didn't have plans to kind of identify the location or development of affordable workforce housing based on predictable natural hazards. I know, at least certainly some of our Mississippi communities here with us today, know the stress is kind of rebuilding after Hurricane Katrina and the situations that might develop when your development visioning, your development planning does not necessarily correspond to new flood maps, new hazard mitigation scenarios. So in some ways, I think the Resilient Housing Planning Guide kind of is trying to help those disaster planning and your basic development practices kind of talk to each other a little bit better. And how do you develop a suitable plan framework for that? So some of the goals of the Resilient Planning Guide are to basically reduce damage and loss of current housing, apply for and receive and use funding after a storm. And we'll go through, there's some specific components, and I'll kind of go through those in a little more details. And also improve plan and building standards for new and renovated housing to kind of help reduce damage and loss in future storms. It also is trying to sort of address that repetitive cycle of just disaster rebuilding, where you're constantly kind of in this reactive situation of having to sort of scramble in the event of a hurricane. So trying to do some of that pre-planning, that pre-mitigation element, kind of bring that together a little bit. So you have that kind of, again, sinking and sort of you're thinking critically about these kind of disaster situations and where houses might be developed, and more importantly, where houses might be able to take advantage of resilient funding to build back better when that disaster occurs. So some of the basic values of it, again, prioritizing some of the existing communities, striving to retain and rehouse people on their own properties, again, kind of in sync with those fortified principles we've seen with Fortified a little bit. How do we have suitable workforce housing where, again, you can just have, at the very least, a roof over your head, you know, a place to go back to, and just kind of deal with that a little bit on some level. Also, just ensuring the equal community representation in the process and outcomes, having that dialogue, having that sort of those stakeholders at the table in this coordinated, systematic planning process where you're dealing with these things before the disaster hits. Some various methods a little bit to talk about when they were developing the housing guide is they assembled a technical advisory committee a little bit to kind of look at, again, doing that literature review, seeing what was kind of lacking a little bit in that situation, doing surveys, again, gap analysis, kind of determining where maybe, again, policies were not sufficiently addressing a need, or there was some sort of maybe if there are enforcement issues, things like that. And so that's kind of, again, kind of going through survey analysis and just kind of looking at building up the case for this situation. And so the Resilient Housing Guide kind of emerged this exhaustive element of what were communities lacking. And the Resilient Housing Guide was the kind of basic product there a little bit. And so Oh, just this past year or year and a half, we've had, Smart Home has worked with 3 pilot jurisdictions. We have their, plans right here. So Foley, right over here. We've got, Willacy County, in Texas. And, St. John the Baptist Parish, in Louisiana. So again, these are some of the pilot communities that were able to develop and fully implement the resilient housing guides, and develop and sort of demo some of these basic plans and provide their own suitable situations a little bit. And from that feedback during that plan process, Smart Home has been working to kind of disseminate that information, tweak the resilient housing guide, and develop, which I'll go into a little more detail about a workbook, a draft workbook. So again, the idea is that we're using these kind of communities as a springboard to kind of, again, use the resilient housing guide as a template for disaster recovery for other communities across the Gulf and across the region. So again, as I mentioned, these are just their pilot jurisdictions. They're just the covers of the resilient housing plans. Again, this might be something you can see, some consultants listed here. The other thing too is the resilient housing guide might be something, when you have that disaster scenario, you bring before your consultants and say, this is what we're kind of working with, this is what we're dealing with. This is how we want to sort of plug and play with this component and build it into, again, some of those different recovery processes and procedures that you're implementing. So some different things the resilient housing plan should include, is just integrating, risk assessments, looking at some basic elements there, just quantifying potential social and economic impacts, for coastal communities. That might mean analyzing risk from wind, storm surge, riverine flooding, various aspects like that. And then applying kind of a location-based risk mapping to guide development decisions. And to sort of see how flooding correlates with different topography, watershed characteristics. And another thing too is you might notice that in certain situations, I certainly see this in situations with coastal communities, you might have areas that might be suitably elevated, but maybe they're underutilized. Maybe they're underutilized commercial corridors, or might have some existing adaptive reuse challenges that might not make them as amenable to immediate redevelopment. But if you're able to kind of go through that process a little bit, you can think about those challenges of adaptive reuse and what it entails to kind of bring those communities maybe into the fold and convert that land use paradigm from maybe say more commercial or office to let's say residential. So being able to find those suitable areas is important there. So incorporating some form of evidence-based risk mapping, and just looking at some of those various situations like that. Establishing a comprehensive disaster housing framework with specific protocols for emergency sheltering, temporary housing solutions, and then kind of moving towards permanent replacement housing. So kind of looking at that sort of phase process as you're kind of, again, going through those different stages of the disaster recovery process. Centering on certainly community preservation, prioritizing on-site housing, and just kind of ensuring that communities are able to kind of have a stable nexus or centering process in which they can rebuild back quickly and effectively. Also, kind of developing any targeted education campaigns. Of course, floodplain managers through CRS are familiar with that to a certain degree, but having to sort of deal with, say, certain elements of the housing procedures, there may be certain elements that, again, might be prioritized as part of the resilient housing plan that you might kind of tweak your existing hazard mitigation protocols and communication procedures. And also just positioning the community competitively to deal with future disaster funds. Knowing where your pots of money are, how they can be utilized, what situation, and being able to, again, effectively sort of sequence and stage your disaster recovery planning when that situation does happen. So some of the different, going to go through some of the different components of the housing guide a little bit here. again, looking at some of the inventory a little bit. Going through an existing housing assessment, which looks at evaluates density and hazards to predict damage and vulnerability. So again, just kind of basically looking at where housing is already, existing housing stock, and just kind of look at where it is in relation to certain disaster scenarios. Then kind of a charrette process or kind of a community visioning process to kind of look at your housing land use idealization. Where do you think housing would, where would you fit housing in the future? Where do you see your community growing a little bit more? But kind of again, plugging in that disaster component to say, here's where we know our disaster maps are saying, this is where we have elevation, or this is where we know that we can are best buffered against certain disaster scenarios. And kind of, again, bringing that into the conversation a little bit. Some different planning components. Again, here we go, the housing, land use, damage, and loss reduction. Looking at where these possible areas would be reduced. Some housing construction damage and loss reduction strategies. And just kind of looking against to one thing to mention here is that this is kind of looking more reducing damage and loss to housing by adjusting density. Again, this might be a situation, again, you look at various areas where, say, missing middle housing has become kind of more of a conversation recently, where might you say a community might be able to add maybe more duplexes or maybe more different variations of multifamily to kind of filter in a little bit of more additional density in areas that can accommodate, it can be suitable receiving areas for density because of their strong site attributes, their potential for buffering against a hurricane scenario. And we're able to kind of look at what that density might look like in that context of a disaster. And then kind of looking at, again, the disaster recovery housing strategy a little bit. So what's your effective response for housing resilience when that emergency strikes? What does your temporary housing situation look like? And just sort of look at that a little bit. Again, community and stakeholder, your community and stakeholder education strategy. Another thing too about disaster recovery housing strategy, also to mention a little bit, was just talking about identifying candidates for retrofitting. It's a big concern right now. I know certainly offices have been less used during the pandemic. We have a lot of Class B and C offices that might be candidates for adaptive reuse. So if you're able to kind of look forward and say that we know that there's some underutilized use categories or existing land uses that you might be sort of targeted for some adaptive reuse, you can sort of work to sort of highlight that, prioritize that, document it, and be able to kind of bring that in the fold as part of a potential disaster or adaptive reuse disaster scenario as things go forward. And then, of course, your funding strategy, like looking again at your different, some of the basic pots of funds that are probably going to come online in the event of a disaster. So looking a little bit about that and seeing not simply just about getting the paperwork ahead, but how those pots of money can be used. What situations are there situations, again, as Candace mentioned, where general mitigation funds for, say, buildings to a higher standard, or just broader, just like small business basic recovery funds, basic elements like that in terms of just and being able to kind of, again, list those, go through those in a comprehensive manner and just sort of say where can those funds be activated, and again, being able to stage yourself and get ready for that situation so that when that triggers, that you have a clear funding set of priorities. And this is just a little more just kind of looking, again, this is just looking at the funding strategy here. We can see various projects to be funded, for example, like reconstruction of flood-prone homes, or something like rehabilitating different units, constructing additional shelter capacity, the goals and conditions of that program, the application timeline, and of course, the grant program and situation. So again, you're like, kind of like your comprehensive plans, you're doing a clear set of short-term, of achievable projects on a short to medium-term front time frame. Syncing those up for grant program, understanding the conditions of that program and when you may be able to apply. So again, thinking about funding in a more of kind of a critical perspective of how do you sequence that after an event of disaster. So again, kind of mentioning again, being prepared for mitigation and funding opportunities, just listing them and just being able to compile and maintain that when the disaster occurs. So for those online, this is the QR code here is a link to the Resilient Housing Planning Guide workbook. The workbook is still in the draft stages a little bit, but the intention here is to kind of, that has now been pilot tested, it's a matter of just circulating that out to some different communities and sort of trying to bring this into the application process. We've had a few basic trainings, and I know Candace certainly might be able to mention some other opportunities for Resilient Housing Guide training a little bit. Here we are. This is another QR code. This is for a simple, again, 45-minute training that goes into a lot more detail than I can about the specifics of the Resilient Housing Guide, and kind of does a little bit of scenario planning, kind of goes through what that might look like a little bit in more detail.
So I want to point out about the workbook. The workbook is being developed so that communities can take that workbook. The beauty of the Resilient Housing Planning Guide is it's not a copy and paste. It's for each community to be able to look at their specific circumstances. So what's good for Willacy County, Texas, may or may not also apply for St. John the Baptist Parish or Foley, Alabama. So the flexibility is there in the Resilient Housing Planning Guide to allow the community to say, this works for us, this doesn't work for us, this would be good here, kind of piece it together so that you can come up with your own unique planning guide to be able to use in your community. Historically, it is disaster happens, we react, and we rebuild. Smart Home America, the Resilient Housing Planning Guide in our mission, we want to mitigate, we want to come up with solutions and implement those prior to the disaster so that when the disaster does happen, the recovery is less stringent, we are prepared, we've thought through all of the things that are pointed out here that you may or may not think about. When it happens, we're all in a frenzy. We're trying to do the best we can. We're making snap decisions a lot of times on things that if we could put a little bit more thought into it, maybe we would have put this new building here instead of putting it over here where it's now continues to be a problem instead of a solution to the long-term situation. Sorry, Stephen, I kind of interjected there, my fault.
No, I think we're getting kind of close to the close of it here a little bit, but
We are.
as I said, we're just kind of sort of talking about the Resilient Housing Guide training. Thankfully, some availability for some of the work that Smart Home is doing with Fannie Mae.
Yes.
There is some technical assistance available for communities that are interested in implementing their own resilient housing plan. So again, feel free to kind of consult with Candace and the Smart Home team, kind of learn more about how this might be applied within your community. So again, if you want to create your own resilient housing plan, there's another QR code to help kind of receive in-person training and what you might be able to kind of work with receiving technical assistance while developing your plan or working with a consultant to help shepherd that plan into place. And also, I just want to mention again, a lot of this work's also been able with the assistance of Mississippi Gulf Coast Community Design Studio.
Absolutely.
So it's certainly been an active process in terms of helping kind of work with that. So again, happy to kind of introduce the Resilient Housing Guide, but now we're going to do a quick pop quiz, kind of just test your knowledge. And then we'll kind of close things out. We'll kind of get to more of the formal Q&A of the presentation.
So if your eyes are bad like mine, question 2 is, which of these tools was created to assist communities in identifying mitigation and land use planning strategies to address housing recovery after a natural disaster? Coastal Construction Code Supplement, Resilient Housing Guide, or Homeowners Handbook to prepare for natural disasters? So I do, as those finish there and everyone in the room agrees with the answers that are on the screen. I do want to say that we do have a planning and policy specialist. Her name is Brooke Truxmondo. She is the expert on all things resilient housing training guide. I have enough knowledge to answer some basic questions. Stephen probably, whether he realizes it or not, he probably has more knowledge to answer the questions from the guide than I do. But if you guys have any questions, anyone who's online, if you have any questions, we can open those up. At this point, before we do that, there's one more, if you'll click it. We want to be sure that this slide shows, we are a nonprofit. So we want to make sure that we thank the folks who fund our ability to be able to do what we do on a daily basis, because without them, we wouldn't be able to. So, any questions? So, none?
Questions? Anyone online have a question that they would like to ask? We're opening it up for questions. You can put it in the Q&A box if you have a question.
Doesn't look like we have any. Or any typing going on over there.
I don't, not so far. It looks like we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everyone for coming, certainly appreciate the invite to come over. I always like to come home. If there's anything that you guys need, happy to answer any questions offline. I can give you my contact information if you need anything. I can connect you with Brooke if you are interested. That QR code that was up there, that will get you to a list where we can get some technical assistance. If you are in the mindset that you would like to look at the training, the resilient housing planning guide a little bit in more detail. That's a mouthful to say, not even gonna lie. If you'd like some technical assistance and maybe developing one of those, planners are not always in a high quantity in a community. And so this guide is there for to hopefully alleviate some of the financial burden that would come along with hiring a planner, as well as guide the community through. So we're here to assist in any way we can.
And yeah, and I'll just briefly add, this is the last of our part of our Coast RI for this quarter. We will be working on some various summer trainings that will be starting next month. So stay tuned. We will be posting a newsletter with some new offerings. We will certainly be reaching out to Smart Home for some other opportunities, but we also have potential opportunities for coastal resilience tools, community rating system, some different topics, and we are always interested in soliciting new ideas for that people may have for trainings that they are interested in from the coastal resilience perspective. But with that in mind, I think we're just ready to close out the presentation, but much appreciation to Candace for taking time to drive over and help kind of pick her brain, so to speak, on all her acumen about technical outreach and some of the various specs and standards of Fortified. But again, appreciate your patience and your time, and I hope everyone has a great day. So there we go.
Thank you again.
Okay.